Testing 1.
Testing 2.
Testing 3.
Testing 4.
He's got it.
He's another natural guess.
Got it.
Welcome to the Testing Podcast, where we're
Thank you very
talking
much.
all things male fertility. And we've got another guest with us today, Jono O'Neill. Or do you call yourself Jono O'Neill or John O'Neill?
So everyone, most of my friends call me Jono, but my wife calls me John because apparently Jono's not quite right.
Or just Sir.
Or just
She definitely does not call me that. I am absolutely not the boss at home.
No. And the reason you're a Sir to many people is also because you're a major in the British Army.
I am indeed.
Which is just outstanding.
Absolutely, yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
First major I've met. So
yeah. But no, it's absolutely fantastic you come to join us today.
Absolute pleasure.
To partly talk about, your fertility journey, but also to talk about fertility in the military sort of environment in the services, because that's quite a unique kind of challenge, both I guess as a member of kind of the services, but also with the work you're doing with the Defence Fertility Network. Is like, okay, how do we support, our wonderful people in the armed services? So, yeah, you're doing some amazing work in that space.
Thank you, it's really kind. Being in the military, it's naturally is due to the requirements of the job, you will find that there are additional challenges that come with it. The classic one of those, obviously, is the fact that we can be deployed for fairly significant chunks of time. And it's very hard to conceive if both partners aren't together for obvious reasons.
Yep.
So that in itself is the initial challenge. Also, we've got the additional challenges that come with relocation on a fairly regular basis. So as an officer, I will be looking to relocate on average about once every 2 years. Soldiers, it can be between 2 and 3 years. And the challenge that comes with is that because each NHS trust is individual in the approach that they take with regard to the testing that they conduct and the specific treatments that they would recommend, you can often find that NHS trusts will be reluctant to take a transfer of treatment going through. So on that basis, it's really important that as an organisation, we do put measures in place to support our personnel going through the journey exactly the same as we would do for anybody else. Because like I've said to many people when I've been conducting briefings, for an individual undergoing a fertility journey, it is not just a big issue for them, it is the only issue. It absolutely dominates everything that's happening. So if we can support them on that journey, not only are we backing them with regard to their aspirations to have a family, but what we're also doing is making them more effective soldiers, airmen, marines, and sailors, because they will be able to focus on that element and by doing so be able to focus on their jobs accordingly. So on that basis, we have what is referred to as the Defence Fertility Network. This is a voluntary group which was set up originally by a Royal Navy and an RAF officer. That's Rachel and Sadie, who I believe you've all met.
Yeah. Wonderful people.
And they realised that there was a gap in the level of support that we had where people could have conversations about this particular area. And let's face it, fertility very much is quite a taboo subject for a lot of people to speak about. They set up a Facebook group which was absolutely aimed centrally at peer support, and it provided an opportunity for people going through similar circumstances to have those positive conversations about getting themselves forward in their own particular journeys. Since then, myself and Laura have joined the team, and that gives us representation across all 3 services. And in addition, we also are open to Ministry of Defence civil servants, so civil servants working on behalf of Defence, but also partners as well, because it's really important that we're not just focused on the individual who's in the armed forces or in the civil service. We're being treated as couples when it comes to treatment options, so we should be treating our personnel in exactly the same way and make sure that their partners feel that they have agency in this process as well. And we've seen huge growth. It's absolutely incredible, which has really illustrated the fact that there are a lot of people who don't know that there are people they can talk to. They don't know necessarily that there are policies and procedures in place that can support them. And that's illustrated that when we became an officially recognised network within Defence in January of last year, we were on about 125 members. As of this morning, and I conducted a check before I came to see you, we are now on 647.
Wow. That's pretty
Yeah, it's a big uptake.
So I'm not saying that as necessarily a positive, because I would much rather have a network of, when it came to fertility, that had absolutely no members and there was absolutely no requirement for it. Yeah. But if people are going to require support, I'd much rather they feel they have a voice and somewhere they can talk about it.
Yeah.
So one of the real strengths that we've got by having those numbers is that the vast majority of fertility issues we have experience of. There will be somebody who, every fertility journey clearly is different, but there will usually be somebody who's faced a similar problem. And if we've got the ability to bring that number of voices together, and someone could put a message up, whether it's anonymous or they put it up publicly with regard to who they are, having somebody there that can say, yep, I was in that position, I did this, and I found it helped. That power of having a conversation is absolutely huge, and realising you're not alone. And that, for me, was something that I didn't have when I went through my journey, because I was unaware that the network existed at that time. So one of the areas we are looking at developing, and it's why we're getting in touch with organisations like Test Him and Him Fertility, is we are a organisation that is approximately 85-90% male, depending on which of the services you're looking at, but our support network remains about 80% female, which means that there are a lot of blokes, and I use that term intentionally, who feel uncomfortable about having this conversation. I personally believe that there is very much a stigma surrounding male fertility and the ability to talk about it, and a really unhelpful narrative that virility is linked to masculinity.
Yeah.
I come from an organisation that is inherently stereotypically masculine. I've worked alongside individuals who are RAF pilots, Royal Navy engineers. I've met people like Toby who are motor racing drivers. We've got people like Rod Gilbert working in the entertainment industry in very stereotypically confident male, masculine sort of roles. I say that stereotypically, clearly. Why is it then that them having a medical condition that requires support undermines that level of masculinity and stops them speaking out about it? And in my journey, I was really surprised about when I started opening up and talking about it, how wrong I was to keep that to myself. So the majority of my fertility journey, we were under the excellent support of the Centre of Gynecology and Reproductive in the Western, and which was based out of Plymouth. I, at the time, was serving with the Royal Marines. So if you're talking about a masculine organisation...
Yeah, Christ, you don't talk about your sperm there, do you?
Exactly. If you're talking about masculine organisation, I don't think you're going to get much more stereotypically masculine than that. I was really surprised. I mean, nobody realistically talks about the fact that they're trying to start a family. The first time that anyone really announces it is when you are in that safe stage of pregnancy and you have that really good celebration because you got to that point and you know that in 6 months' time there's going to be a new arrival into the family. But you don't usually share with your family the fact that, we're doing the deed right now because we want to try and have a child. Clearly that goes out the window when you start looking at fertility support because you need the support from your family throughout that. So the entire way through that process, you will find that you are having very open conversations about the fact that, we have got the sample being taken this morning and the eggs are being extracted. It's being implanted. We'll know in 2 weeks if it's taken. These are things that you would normally not have those discussions about publicly. No. So transit that to a work environment. So I was required potentially that they were looking at moving me from my current posting to another location. We'd already shifted our fertility support from one NHS trust to another, which was no small feat. And I'm eternally grateful to Plymouth for the fact that they were prepared to take us as a direct transfer. And in that respect, because they were looking at reassigning me, I had to speak to my commanding officer and I had to say, sir, I'm sorry, but this is what I've got going on in the background. This is not as simple as me and my wife packing up our cases and moving. We have this treatment going on in the background. And having to sit down with somebody and tell them something that is very intimate, very personal of that nature can be incredibly difficult and very daunting. Now, I was really lucky. My commanding officer was phenomenal. Fought tooth and nail to keep me within the unit. And again, eternally grateful for the fact that he succeeded in doing so, which enabled us to go through our fertility support. But what really touched me and what I realised very early on was that I needed to confide in somebody within my organisation to make sure that I had somebody who knew that if I was in a bit of a grumpy mood because something wrong had happened or I was going through a period of stress, somebody needs to know why. And that person was my Sergeant Major. So effectively my second in command of the unit that I was working with at the time.
Sergeant Majors are never perceived as gentle, kind people, aren't they? They're the ones that are shouting at you on the parade square. Is that a Sergeant Major's job? And this is us being civvies and
try to understand a little bit.
and very stereotypical.
That is absolutely the stereotype. But as much as the Sergeant Major's got responsibility for upholding the discipline of the organisation, they also have a welfare responsibility to the personnel
and they
as well.
are still just human, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I'd actually go as far to say that some of them are above human, some of the outputs they can provide, because some of them are absolutely incredible people. My Sergeant Major could not have been more supportive. Regular conversations with him on almost a weekly basis, particularly when we were coming up to the point of treatment taking place. When we got to the point where we were approaching implantation and that horrendous 2-week wait to find out whether or not it's taken, I decided to be more open about it than I thought I would have been previously. So I had my entire troop of Royal Marines in for a meeting, gave the standard updates which they would expect to receive as part of our weekly battle rhythm. And then I opened up and said, gents, over the next couple of weeks, I may not be completely myself. This is what's happening in my private life. A few of you might know about it. I presume the majority of you won't. But I want you to know this is down to this process that's going on in my life and nothing to do with me. The response I had was absolutely phenomenal in terms of everyone from my most junior Lance Corporal all the way through to my seniors was incredibly supportive. The number of brews got brought to my office without being asked increased. And I couldn't have asked for more from those group of individuals. Once we had the implantation take place and we got to the 3-month period, knowing that we were fairly safe within the pregnancy, because obviously that worry goes
first 12
way
weeks.
beyond that first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I let my Sergeant Major know that it had taken, and him and my my colour sergeant knocked on my door, and this was literally 30 seconds later, and said, "Boss, we know you're a dirty, stinking Pongo," which is the nickname for the army with the Royal Marines, but your little one was conceived in the Corps, so we're claiming it for the Royal Marines. And they presented me with a baby blanket in Royal Marines Corps colours.
Oh, that's really special.
There are very few times in my life where I've been completely speechless / welling up in the way I was at that point in time there.
That's super special.
But if I can have that relationship with those individuals in that organisation, I don't see why that shouldn't be more the accepted norm. And I think there's still a few issues with regard to our ability to talk about this subject. So if a female talks to another female and turns around and says, I've got a low ovarian reserve, I have low levels of progesterone, and I'm struggling to conceive because of that, the usual response would be, I would hope, let's go grab a cup of tea and have a chat. Yeah. If a bloke turns around to another bloke and says, I've got issues with my sperm, and because of that, I am struggling to conceive, I would suggest one of the usual responses will be coffin humour, gallows humour, along the lines of, it's all right, mate, send her around my place, I'll sort her out for you.
Yeah, quite.
Which is fine, because that's how we tend to deal with things.
It's banter.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's banter in the Corps.
But at some point, you need to have that conversation. And the more of those conversations I had, the more I realised that it's incredibly common. So within the unit I was in with the Royal Marines at the time, I found out that my direct line manager had both of his children via assisted conception at Harley Street. Mm-hmm. I found out the second in command of the entire unit had just had a child as a result of IVF. And I found out that an exchange officer from Australia who I was very good friends with was a test tube baby himself. And that was within one microcosm.
Yeah.
It is incredibly common, but no one speaks about it. And I don't understand why.
Yeah. And what was it like, that moment when you stood in front of your team? I know you don't call them teams, but I've forgotten what the word is. Battalion, whatever it was. That moment when you actually said, right, guys, this is what I'm going through. I'm not going to be myself for the next 2 weeks. What was that like for you? Because that must have been petrifying, wasn't it?
I'll be honest, because of what was about to happen, it was probably the least of my concerns.
Right.
I was more concerned about what was going to be happening with my wife, how she was doing, the fact that she was being injected multiple times a day and the pressures that was putting on her and her body. And she was...
So it was almost like you didn't care about what they thought or their reaction. That was actually just, right, this is where I am at, guys. I don't care about your reaction, but I just want you to know where I'm
Absolutely.
at.
I was more conscious about, it wasn't about me, it was about me supporting them, because I wanted to make sure that they knew that what was happening with me, it was important to me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to impact upon them. And I would be back to myself as soon as possible, because they were used to me being their commander, their leader. So, but no, it was one of those where once it was done, you did look back at it and think that was not as big a deal as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always the way in it when we
Yeah.
speak to men that have spoken
perception
up.
of letting that vulnerability go, because clearly it's vulnerable, aren't you? You're open to whatever discussions that are going to go on in the platoon or whatever the group is, but you must have felt a sense of relief having done it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was one of those where, because it was open, it wasn't taboo.
Yeah.
Things are only taboo because you don't discuss them,
That's
you don't
right.
talk about
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And the subsequent discussions I've had since, I've done briefings from most junior soldiers all the way through to generals within the armed forces talking about this particular subject. And I absolutely believe that being open, honest and candid about this particular subject is only advantageous, particularly when there are certain areas where you will find that the narrative isn't so positive. So some of the things which I picked up on, which I'd seen previously but hadn't really thought about until I was in the position that I was going through my own fertility journey, were very much present in the media, whether that's social and on TV. So in one of my favourite comedies is Scrubs, and absolutely brilliant comedy, don't get me wrong, and I'm not criticising storyline. However, when Turk believes that he has got issues conceiving, there is this image of him jokingly rocking within the shower going, "I am a man and a man is supposed to have babies." You then combine that with, you'll forgive me, the comedy with Meghan Markle in it, the lawyer-based one. One of the characters on that, he is required to go for a sperm test and jokingly takes a copy of the Financial Times in with them. So it takes something that is quite a stressful situation when you're going to go and do the act in those circumstances for a positive purpose, and to a degree to delegitimises it. I think the worst one I've ever seen was a very well-known social media influencer on YouTube. I was trying to find videos for our network to try and support males with regard to videos that would support them. And I found a video with a very well-known social media influencer. I got really excited because they were conducting a sperm test. I was like, brilliant. High visibility individual talking about male fertility. This is absolutely fantastic. Then I discovered that the video was them having a competition with their lackeys to see who had the greatest number of sperm. Well, there's a few issues with that. The first one is it reinforces that that stereotype that the more virile you are, the more manly you are. But the second one is I have a very high sperm count, but I still needed support because I had issues with morphology. Having a high count does not equal the fact you're going to be more likely to conceive.
Exactly.
And when you've got millions of individuals following that particular narrative, it's not a very positive place in order to start this conversation. And those sorts of narratives will stop people speaking out about their own issues. And if I've learned anything from my journey, it's that conversations and talking about it openly and in a mature fashion, as opposed to just the banterous fashion, it's what's needed.
And do you think that's a lot harder within the military? Do you kind of get the sense that, or from listening to what you're saying, is I can almost imagine that everything you've said is what we see across the board in society, in the fertility world, in that men don't talk about this stuff. There's the banter and what have you. Do you think the military kind of amplifies or magnifies these issues because there are certain personas or beliefs or systems, and obviously you have such a hierarchical kind of work system? Does that make it even harder, do you think?
I've got to answer anecdotally because I've got nothing to back up my opinion. I actually possibly think it's the contrary.
Oh, okay.
So as an organisation, we are a cross-section of society. So we have exactly the same issues at all levels that you would expect from any other section of society. That's the start point. The second point is that we take a very proactive view with regard to welfare. At the end of the day, we are designed to assure operational effectiveness. Can we deploy on operations and do the job we need to do? So we need to make sure that we take care of our people so they are enabled to do that. So if I was to look at some of the policies and procedures we've got in place, which aren't perfect, I'm not claiming that they are. We are in a good place, but they're not perfect. we do have some elements put in place that actually are there to support our personnel. So in addition to the fact that we have the Army Welfare Service and the Navy and the RAF have exactly the same, we also have policies in place to support people on fertility journeys. Mm-hmm. So, for example, because we do not get to choose where we live, we have a separate, not funding stream. The funding still comes via the NHS. And the standards are still exactly the same as if you're a civilian. It's the NICE standards that you have to meet in order to access fertility support. However, we are entitled, no matter where we are in NHS England, we are entitled to the maximum number of cycles that are being offered anywhere in England. So currently that's 3. Mm-hmm. If that was to go up, go down, we would match that accordingly. So we are, to a degree, immune from the postcode lottery on the basis that we do have to move so often. In addition to that, we recognise the fact that individuals need to stay in one place, ideally, to keep their treatment going. Because of that, people can apply for stability agreements where they will say, yep, can I stay in this location for X amount of time more to enable me to take to do this? That is now fairly well known. I managed to get an additional 6 months in Plymouth, which enabled us to go through our cycle and successfully conceive. So that policy is in place as well. Not just for fertility, but we have a policy that you can request to reduce your number of nights out of bed, i.e. how much time you're spending away from home if you want. And that's not just for fertility purposes. That might be a case of, oh God, I've been away a heck of a lot recently. I now need to have a bit of time with my family. There is a policy in place for that. Now, you're not always guaranteed to get that. If you're the only specialist available and you are needed, clearly the operational effectiveness of the armed forces will come first in those circumstances. But it's very rare that I hear that that's the case. The vast majority of times, line managers are really positive. One of the areas that I found is that there is no automatic entitlement for leaving the armed forces with regard to fertility appointments. However, the vast majority of our members in the fertility network have said that line managers are very understanding. It's recognised that the NHS and other practitioners want to treat a couple, if it's a couple going for treatment, as opposed to the individual, and therefore there's a lot of understanding that comes with that. But a lot of it does come down to line management. It's not just about policy. We've had to have conversations with some line managers to try and help them understand the impact of a fertility journey, because unless you've been through it, why would you get it? Yeah. The example I'll give, I'm never going to critique another line manager, but if I look at myself when I was a 26-year-old platoon commander, I had a corporal come to me who was going through his fertility journey. And I thought I was the absolute bee's knees because I gave him all the time off he wanted to do the treatment, clearly, not just the time off. Signed all the paperwork that he needed signed for him to access the treatment. But not once did I turn around to him and say, do you want to come in for a brew and have a chat? How are you feeling?
That extra level of support.
Exactly.
It's not just, exactly. It's not just the procedural type of issues,
But I'm not beating myself up about that, because as a 25, 26-year-old with limited life experience at that point, why would I have thought about that? It's not something that I'd be tracking on my radar. So a huge amount of what we're doing now within defence is trying to spread the word with regard to fertility. It's not about people becoming experts, but it's about them knowing where to go to access a bit of advice and ideally speak to somebody who can give them an insight to what their person are going through.
So in that way, do you think culture has changed within the armed forces of being more proactive in discussing these types of issues about fertility?
I think it sounds better in the military than it does in civvy.
I'm sat here in awe. This is brilliant. Yeah,
there does seem to be a support
really
network
proactive.
There. Yeah. So do you see that there has been progression then, Jono, in that sense?
In terms of progression, I think that's best evidenced with our network growing the way that it has. I think the support has been there for. I don't know when the policies came into place. Sure. I've got no idea on the history of them, but in terms of specifically for fertility, we are far more discussed than it has been, and that got recognised earlier on this year. We were the armed forces, the Army was representing the armed forces, was presented with a commended award at the Working Families Best Practice Awards for pathways to parenthood and assisted conception. We had been shortlisted the year before to receiving a commended award at a national level. Ceremony was absolutely phenomenal, especially with some of the organisations that were there. So is progress being made? Absolutely. I think it's just a case of that the conversation is, again, we're just another example of that microcosm of society, and this conversation becoming more prevalent due to a lot of the work that Infertility, yourselves, Rod Gilbert and so forth have done about making this front and centre. So I think it is really positive that we are moving in that particular direction.
Yeah. And do you think you're getting more men speaking up? I know you sort of said you've got 640 odd members in the network and it's 80% women. Are you finding that men are more confident to talk, within the military about what's going on?
We're getting there, and I'd suggest that the vast majority of men will only talk about it when there is a requirement for them to do so. And they may not be so willing to publicly join the group. I'm quite simple with my response to welfare and support when it comes to my personnel. I don't care who they speak to as long as they speak to somebody. And that's on any issue, not just fertility.
It's all about communication, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think this is the key thing, whenever you're going through any difficulty in your life, you've got to communicate. You can't keep it to yourself. And I think it's no different in the military. I think you've got to be able to open up and shout and say, look, I need a bit of help here.
Absolutely. I found that a lot of the males that have certainly engaged me might be more comfortable doing that on a one-to-one basis. One of the things that we absolutely do is whenever I give a briefing or I'm speaking to somebody one-on-one, I'm not Major John O'Neill, I'm Jono. Because fertility issues are rank agnostic. They don't care necessarily what your gender is, with the majority of issues being 50-50. It doesn't care what your belief system is. It doesn't care what your background is. It can affect anybody. So it's really important to take it down to the human level and have that sensible conversation with an individual.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got to wear your heart on the sleeve really in that instance, haven't you? Because I think when you're going through a fertility journey, you do feel like you're the only one going through it. You feel like you're the only one on this planet that's going through that journey. And sometimes actually, if you've got someone, a role model like yourself within the organisation, that can put their heart on their sleeve and be open about their own story, it makes them feel less alone. That opens up the cork in the bottle for conversation. And all the time you can break those sort of stigmas down like that. The difference is amazing. I know from my kind of Racing for Fertility campaign, using motorsport as a kind of way of just talking about this has opened up so much conversation with so many strangers that are now people that I kind of love and adore. I've got really strong relationships and bonds with them because I've helped them throughout their journey. So I really admire what you've done. I think it's really, really fantastic what you've done within the military. And I'm a very, very small part of Defence Fertility. I've been a member for a little while now, even though I'm not in the military. But no, I'm really proud to be part of it because it's so wonderful to seeing all the communication on there and actually seeing people support each other. And there's actually a lot of contribution on there, which I think is really, really great. And it's only down to the work that you and your colleagues have done. So
that's very kind. I think one of the difficulties about talking about this area that it's very difficult to talk about is the fact that not everybody's going to be successful. You will hear far more success stories than you will people not being successful because people are prepared to talk about where it's gone right. I was incredibly unlucky, as anyone is who goes a fertility journey, to require that level of support. We were incredibly lucky to have my daughter, who is now an absolutely thriving, loudmouth 2-year-old, and I wouldn't change her for the world. So incredibly lucky to get to that point. But it's those individuals out there as well that have reached the end of their particular journey and not been successful. They are also individuals that I do think sometimes get forgotten about and absolutely need a level of support. One of the conversations I've had regularly is that irrespective if it's natural or if it's an assisted conception, and we've had this conversation within Defence, is that a loss at any stage of the pregnancy, be that a week after the conception or that being 9 months down the line or at any point, it is a bereavement. And those individuals need to be supported as such. I've heard previous stories where a friend of mine had conceived, and after she'd had a fairly early miscarriage, they turned around to them and said, well, it was only early days, wasn't it? Which is incredibly unhelpful.
It's just insensitive, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so I don't think that's necessarily uncommon. And I don't think it's never meant maliciously. I've got no doubt about that whatsoever. But it's having that sensitivity towards the individuals that are going through that journey and providing them the support that they need.
Yeah. But that's why it's so important to make this awareness, isn't it? Because we talk about the 1 in 7 couples go through this fertility journey, and they're the unfortunate people that have to go through that, unfortunately. But the education isn't just for those; it's for the 6 out of 7 that are fortunate that they don't need any assisted reproduction treatment. And actually, if they're better educated of the turmoil, the emotions, the journey itself of what IVF is like, or whatever that might be, then it can prevent those kind of comments being made. And I think that's really, really important as well. And I imagine that what you're doing within the military is very much trying to do that, is trying to educate everyone, so that if a line manager is faced with someone that is going through a fertility journey, they're a little bit more kind of like educated to perhaps not say the wrong things, because it might not be intentional. You know, I've had a friend in the early doors of my fertility journey and said comments that really did hurt me. And you know, he's a very great friend of mine. He didn't mean to say what he meant to say, just was trying to help. But the lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge about it, how was he supposed to help? How would he, you know, you can't expect someone just to suddenly know what that's all about, isn't it? Absolutely.
And it comes down to even the most simple things, I think, in terms of, you know, everyone thinks, oh, you're going to go through a fertility journey. Fantastic. You're going to get loads of sex. Yeah. You lucky.
How often do you hear that?
Yeah,
it's almost the opposit, isn't it?
You lucky guy. It's going to be this, and this. But there is nothing romantic or sexy about your sex life being.
The ovulation window come on.
The ovulation window comes in. The mobile phone app tells you, we're doing it this morning. Yeah. The spontaneity, the fun, you know, that sort of stuff. It becomes quite mechanical.
And guys need to chase. Fundamentally, guys need the chase.
So I think it is. I sound like I'm trying to say we can't have a sense of humour with it. There are elements where it can. I think as blokes in particular, banter is a very good coping strategy for that. Yeah. But at some point, you just need to have those sensible conversations that are the other side of it. And I think that sometimes we struggle to have those.
Yeah, I think I can imagine actually the military being a really good kind of family to support any couple. Like if they're open and the people are sensitive and understand. It's such a close-knit kind of network. It's just the same for paramedics, firefighters, police. There's a certain team spirit and kind of gelling that goes on in those sorts of environments. And it might be, you know, people are listening to this and they just work in an office, you know, and you don't get that. People go in, they do their work, they go home, and it might be quite hard. Whereas actually I think maybe being in the military, you have that incredible network of people that you can tap into, and it sounds like, you know, you're doing a lot of the right things.
We certainly hope so. We try and take guidance, because that's a critical part of it as well. We don't pretend to be the experts in this. We've been really lucky with some of the work that we've done with Fertility Network UK. We're one of their fertility in the workplace partners. They've delivered lunchtime insights for our members, and we've got plans that they're going to provide some from some of our line managers and chain of command to dispel some of the fertility myths and so forth. Yeah. In addition to that, we've got a partnership where we're working with some other organisations such as the Bank of England, NatWest Group, who also got nominated for the same awards that we did. We exchange contact details. We're not doing everything perfectly. We can learn from them in the same way they can learn from us. In terms of the military family, absolutely. For me, it's been one of the perks of working within the organisation is that team is the right word, no matter whether that is section of 8 people or a brigade of several thousand. We are a team that we're working to one objective. But what that does is promote really strong bonds. It's not always perfect. There's the banter side that I've always said is there. But for me, it was a case of once I'd had that conversation, I felt a lot more open. I'm not going to say that everybody's journey is going to be exactly the same, far from it. No. There may be some people who had a negative experience when they opened up about it, and that's why it becomes so personality dependent with regards to line managers, and why education is so important to make sure that they fully understand what that individual is going through.
Yeah. But by having that network means that, you know, people have got another outlet other than just their line manager to open up and discuss and learn a little bit more about what they can do whilst they're serving.
Absolutely. And the Fertility Network, intentionally, we've got it set up so that an individual can ask a question with their name present, or they can do it anonymously. Or if they're really worried about the fact that it might get seen from them, they can drop us a message and one of the admins will stick it on their behalf. We are open enough that members can join, but we have kept it private so people can be completely honest and say, I'm having difficulties engaging my chain of command on this and this. Can I get some support? And there will always be somebody out there who can turn around and say, yep, I've been in that position. Have you considered this? Have you looked at this? And most of the time it's down to lack of understanding on behalf of chain of command with regard to how an application form needs to be filled in, who it needs to go to, whose signature is needed where, which we find with the vast majority of policies. I don't think that's unique to the military setting. No, it's the same everywhere. But no, we've the benefit we also have of having a membership of that size is that we are listened to in defence, and that's a really positive place to be. And it's down to small changes. So the Army, for example, in the soldier terms of service, which is basically the contract for our soldiers, it now includes a line in there that says fertility support should be a factor in deciding what posting somebody get.
Wow.
So if someone's being
amazing.
relocated, that should be a consideration. It doesn't mean it's going to be the overarching consideration, but it will be one. In the Royal Air Force, recently we've seen direction coming out that if an individual is undergoing treatment, that needs to be a consideration before you deploy them. That is an absolute positive as well, the fact that that is physically being stated. So these are all really positive steps that are coming forward, which means the defence is listening and is putting itself in the right direction.
Sure.
I don't necessarily think it was ever in a horrendous direction compared to the rest of society, but I think a lot of people get very surprised when they find out that defence has a network for fertility. People don't consider us the sort of organisation that would. I'm not sure why, because we're the same as any other organisation in terms of the cross section of people that we have. But so you do tend to be a little bit surprised on that basis.
Yeah. And kind of what's happened for you? So obviously you went through treatment, you've got your daughter, but you've gone on to have further investigations or treatment, haven't you? Personally?
Absolutely. So this is where I think the power of conversations comes in. So my daughter was born via ICSI. So the issue that we had predominantly was that I have low levels of sperm morphology. So I have weirdly shaped swimmers is probably the best way of describing that. Yep. So ICSI differs to IVF. With IVF, you would extract the eggs from the female, you'd get a sample from the male, put them together and let nature take its course. Due to the fact that I have low sperm morphology, they wanted to individually select a sperm cell and inject it into the egg so they can choose one that visibly looks like it's going to be the best one for the job. It's incredible what they could do with science. The fact they could do it is unbelievable, and I have so much admiration and respect for the people that work in that particular area, because for me, they're absolute miracle workers. But I recall when we were going through treatment, seeing everything that my wife went through. And not a word of lie, my wife is 100% my hero. The amount that she went through emotionally, physically, was huge in order for us to have our little girl today. And she will turn around and say it was all worth it. But one of the things that never got discussed with me beyond the sperm test was what other factors it could be. And it was only via a conversation with Toby that I found out about varicoceles. So varicocele is like a varicose vein inside the testicle. In the vast majority of people, 90% of people who have varicoceles, they all have it in the left testicle only. And then in case of 10% of individuals that have it, it will be in the right as well. And unfortunately, I am in that 10%.
Natural. Yeah.
I actually got diagnosed with my varicocele back in 2012 when I was going through officer training.
Gosh.
I was doing a check of that particular part of the body and thought I found a lump, and went and got it checked out. And I got told it was a varicocele. Could I cope with it? If I could, we'll leave it go. And that's what we did. I hadn't even thought about it again until the conversation that I had with Toby. And you'll correct me if I'm wrong, if I get this incorrect. But my understanding is on the basis that you have the varicocele, it increases the temperature within the testicles, which has an adverse impact on sperm generation. Cool balls results in better sperm. So I've recently undergone a testicular varicocele embolization, and once again, medical professionals amaze me. Small incision, you can probably just about see it there, made on my neck, and they inserted a series of platinum coils into the testicular vein in order to embolize the varicocele. Local anaesthetic, done in the space of an hour and a half, couple of weeks of feeling a little bit uncomfortable in that particular area, and I'm back in the game. I can't guarantee that's going to have the result I want, but hopefully it will increase our chances of conceiving naturally. And if I can do anything to avoid my wife going through what she went through again, I will do so. However, off the back of that, this is hopefully it will help. We're still planning to enter the next cycle. And we're now doing it with the reality that a lot of people face, which is the expense. Because we have a child already, we're no longer entitled to funding. So we will be going down that private sector route. And again, some parents, I'm absolutely staggered at the amounts that they've spent, and I can understand why. Now having my own daughter, in terms of being a parent, it's priceless. So I can understand the amounts that people spend, but it is absolutely not a cheap process, which means for some people it's inaccessible.
Even saying that, I think what you have done is optimise your opportunity to have, a good chance on the next private cycle that may go through.
If you need it at all.
And whether you need it at all,
Absolutely.
So if there's no other risk factors, there's a good chance that natural conception could occur anyway.
Absolutely. And I think this is, this is one of the areas that, I started looking at infertility and testing, is that there's a lot of focus traditionally on the female, but when it's 50-50, ask those questions, is there anything I can do? And it might be there's nothing medically you can do, because it might be a female infertility problem and there isn't anything you can do. But I found that I had more agency and engagement when I tried to take steps. So I gave up alcohol, I gave up caffeine, I took supplements, one of the branded vitamins that are specifically there for fertility. I increased my physical exercise to try and ensure my testosterone levels were increased. All these things that you can do, the opportunities are there, but I'm not convinced that everyone knows about them. I think, again, we're going back to those conversations, that education, to try and take those steps, because they're not big sacrifices and they can make one hell of a difference. I remember I took my first sperm sample when we were initially going through. I then put the changes in my life in terms of no alcohol, no caffeine, plenty of sleep, vitamins, exercise. The second time we went through, yes, my results still were not fantastic. We still required treatment, but they were better than they were. Yeah. So there was a change there. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not going to guarantee that will happen for everybody. I'm not a medical professional.
No, but there's simple steps that you can take that may get you a win. Or an increase.
But as a guy, I think it's quite because quite often guys kind of get, I don't want to say nagged, encouraged from their partners to eat nuts, keep their balls cool, mobile phones out of the pockets, etc., etc. What they read on the internet, which is all sound advice. But actually, I think for us guys, if you put those things in place and you've got kind of like a before and an after, and you've seen a result, that's quite encouraging to keep doing it. So that if you then have a failed cycle at that point or no conception, you keep doing it, and the kind of compound effect is the long-term consistency of that can make quite a dramatic change. And quite frankly, these kind of things are life-changing, because if that ultimately gives you the child that you desperately want through making these kind of changes, that's life-changing. You can't put a price on that. And this is all just free things you can do really, really simply. Yeah. And actually, what sacrifice is that? It's nothing at all, really, is it?
It's not a big
just
sacrifice.
Living healthily.
But it is being aware of what those sacrifices are, whether it's down to lifestyle, whether it's down to nutrition, exercise, as you said, or just trying to avoid things which could make a difference, in your fertility journey. So things like cycling, great thing to do for health and so forth, but not necessarily good for your nuts. Yeah. So, that's some of the things that we need to sort of bear in mind, I think. But
I'm smiling because I come from a triathlon background and I've not been on a bike now for quite a while. I am on a cycling ban until child number 2 is conceived.
No, absolutely. Makes sense, doesn't it?
And I know that there's, it can be quite intimidating with the amount of literature that's out there, because there is a huge amount out there to try and take into account. And you see everything from, I don't know about anyone else, but on a daily basis, I get an ice bath advert on my Facebook at the moment.
Yeah,
it's trendy right now, isn't it? Ice bath.
And I'm starting to see articles coming on my Facebook feed as to whether or not ice baths can help with fertility because of the cooling effect. I'd be really interested to know what the science is that backs those, but we are somewhat bombarded with information, and it's about understanding the simple steps that work, as opposed to some of the fads that can get put out there.
I guess you just need one reliable website. And a simple questionnaire.
And a simple questionnaire that might just be validated.
Might just highlight
and identify some risk factors that you could do and sort out yourself before needing any further.
But you're right, Jono, in terms of getting that information. So for you, the varicocele conversation was really by chance, I guess.
By
so
chance.
You picked up Toby's story,
absolutely.
spoke to Toby, and that's after you'd been diagnosed with it. So absolutely. I guess at least you knew you had one, but it never crossed your mind that it was impacting
I had
fertility.
no idea it would be fertility related. My understanding was if it felt uncomfortable, we could do something about it.
See, what's interesting is the stats on varicocele, because for male infertility in particular, once people have been diagnosed, it represents 40% of male infertility.
Quite high, isn't it?
40%. So, just by going and getting your nuts checked, and just an ultrasound could identify that there could be an issue down there. You may not have any symptoms, but it will normally have an impact on your fertility. And we know what sort of grade that looks like. It's a 3 millimeter, what they call a reflux, where blood is rushing in and out of the testicle. That makes a massive difference in the temperature of your testicles and the damage that it can cause. So it shouldn't be ignored. And unfortunately, in some instances, it is not picked up in general practice, and it's not picked up by specialists either in some cases. So, but yeah, check your nuts, guys.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things as well is it sounds like a horrific procedure. When someone tells you they're going to make an incision in your neck and insert platinum coils into your testicular vein, that fairly readily makes people sit up and pay attention.
You say, what?
But the reality of it is that, yes, for a couple of days, I was chilling out in bed, taking life very, very steady. For a couple of weeks, I wasn't doing physical training and I was taking things slowly. But off the back of that, I'm absolutely fine 2 weeks later. There are far worse procedures that are out there. I think you were in a very similar position in your treatment as well. And there was a gentleman on the infertility recently who openly talked about his surgery because he wanted to make sure that people were reassured. For me, it was quite simple. I just saw the number of injections my partner was taking. I saw some of the testing she went through. The one that sticks in my head is the Hycosi, where they are doing a test on the fallopian tubes to see if there's a blockage within them. The look on her face absolutely broke my heart. So if I can go through what is a local anaesthetic surgery, which has, there's always risks with surgery, but my understanding is they are minimal when it comes to a varicocele. If I can undergo that treatment and try and avoid her going down that route, then I absolutely will do, 100%.
And all you've done is make your crown jewels more valuable.
Exactly that. I think
part of the Platinum Club,
I think the nickname I was looking at was Wolverine because I now have a platinum endoskeleton.
I like that. That's good. But physically, I'm curious because I know when leading up to my varicocele surgery, I used to have like dull ache, go out for a run, feel like a dull ache afterwards, and just kept quiet about it for years. But after the surgery, it was like I had a new pair of nuts. They were lighter. I had this like the dull ache went. I'm just curious, did you have a similar benefit from it?
I don't know yet because I'm still only 2.5 weeks post-surgery and I've not been for a run or a tab yet. I did do a martial arts tournament at the weekend and it was a bit more sensitive than normal, so I don't think it would fully healed at that point. However, we do an awful lot of weighted running and tabbing, fast marching in the military, so I am absolutely hopeful that the slight dull ache that I have experienced over the years will somewhat be dissipated off the back of it.
You'll have a spring in your set.
I'll keep you posted. I'll give you a nuts update.
All the lads at the army go, what's up with Jono? He's got a right spring in his step. New balls. New balls. No, I was just curious though, because it was, for me, it was like, that was the biggest like physiological transformation I could kind of explain really. I just felt like I had a new pair, and once I got running again, I was like, this is brilliant. It's great. And touch wood, it's been like that since. So I'm very grateful of the medical practitioners. Stephen Moser was the guy that operated on me and blew my mind watching them do their work. Like, it still blows my mind to the day. And I think I've got like 8 platinum coils all tangled in there now.
Show off. I've only got 6.
Have you got 6? Still a lot though, because usually it's like 1 or 2.
There's top trumps again.
We did that day.
As in a previous episode.
But it's fascinating how, like, I remember seeing them before they went in and like actually seeing them implanted. So I don't know if you could see the screens, but I could see where they were going. It just looked like a coiled mesh of like, what's that? But that simple thing, those simple pieces of platinum have ultimately given me Oliver, changed my life, and I'm in huge gratitude to the entire medical service for that. It's quite incredible, isn't it?
I'm grateful for the conversation we had. Yes, it was by chance, but it's those chance conversations that can make a difference. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it does put us in that place as to whether it's natural or it enhances our next treatment cycle. It's taking ownership. It gives you agency, and it gives you the opportunity to feel like you've done something about it, and that in itself is a real positive step that you can take.
That's why we're here, isn't it, really? Because that's the message that we want to share with so many guys out there and couples out there, is that, by simple just having a chat about nuts or your sperm or fallopian tubes or whatever, it can make such a difference if you just be a bit more open or have that greater sense of awareness or just educate yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. But best of luck, John. I really hope
best of luck.
it'd be great if you get a natural conception from it.
It'd be
really
incredible,
great,
but it's one of those, isn't it, where you... I've always said when I approach anything in life, you always hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and then you shouldn't go too far wrong.
Yeah.
But
and it's early days for you as well. If it's 2.5 weeks, you
you
can take 3 to 6 months before everything settles down. So
absolutely, So we'll keep fingers crossed on that.
Good luck. Let us know, and thank you so much for taking your time to join us today,
Thank you
and all the amazing work you do for Defence Fertility Network. We're really proud to be kind of hopefully supporting you with that. Testing, hopefully can do some stuff with you, aren't we, in the future? And just keep up the great work. We love the military, love all that you all do to keep us safe.
Yeah.
So it's nice for us to be able to give a little something back. And good luck with your future journey.
Thanks, Jens.